April 2010. The dry, scorching desert air enveloped the old residential area of Palm Avenue, south of Phoenix, Arizona, where brown brick houses stood silently under the blazing sun. The light from Sergeant Lisa Moreno's flashlight pierced through the cracked concrete, shining down on something faintly glowing beneath the foundation. Central, I need the forensics team at the Palm Avenue 1142 scene. Possible connection to the 1973 missing person file. Her voice echoed in the silence amid the dry winds whistling through the fence. What began as a routine cold case file review had now become something entirely different, something about to answer the questions that had haunted Phoenix for nearly 40 years. Beneath the old cement layer, the technical team found a fragment of a crystal necklace and a portion of human bone, things no one thought would still exist after all that time. The victim's name was quickly identified: Ashley Crane, 24 years old, a talented dancer at the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory, who had vanished without a trace in the summer of 1973. For nearly 4 decades, her disappearance was the city's unsolved mystery. One July evening, Ashley left a late rehearsal, drove her silver Ford Galaxy away from the theater, and never came home. 2 days later, police found the car abandoned on the edge of South Mountain. Doors unlocked, keys still in the ignition. Inside the car were ballet shoes, a notebook, and a pink silk scarf. No blood. No signs of struggle. No body. Her husband, Douglas Crane, a retired aerospace engineer, stated that Ashley left for work as usual and didn't return. But his statement didn't match the timeline, and a cement purchase receipt dated right after her disappearance raised questions that no one could answer. When police found no direct evidence, the case was classified as missing person with suspicious circumstances, then closed in 1974. For many years, Palm Avenue lived with that story like a scar. Residents said that whenever the night wind blew through, you could hear faint ballet music rising from somewhere in the ground. But no one mentioned her name anymore. No one dared. Then 37 years later, when the Phoenix Cold Case Unit re-examined old files, Moreno reopened the dusty sealed box, labeled #73 4471. Inside were a silver hair, a pink fabric scrap, and a cement sample, tiny pieces of evidence, forgotten, that became the key to unlocking the past. The excavation of Palm Avenue was not just the end of a disappearance. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose secrets buried for nearly half a century in the heart of a seemingly peaceful community. Because when authorities identified the suspect and made the arrest, it wasn't a stranger or an anonymous criminal. It was someone who had lived among them, who had attended Ashley's memorial, who had looked into her family's eyes for years, carrying a horrifying secret in the very house where she vanished. The Ashley Crane case is not just a mystery solved, it is proof of the persistence of detectives who refuse to let files gather dust, of the power of modern forensic technology, and of justice, though delayed, never denied. When Ashley disappeared in 1973, suspicion spread throughout the Phoenix neighborhood like a desert fire. Neighbors accused each other. Families stopped talking. The search for the young dancer had revealed simmering cracks in the small American community, cracks that would split wide open when the truth was finally exposed nearly 40 years later. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was always very close. The suspect had been interviewed in the initial investigation, but slipped through the net. For years, he lived in the community, attended memorials, and pretended to mourn the person he himself had made disappear. Where are you watching from today? Please leave your location in the comments below. I'm always curious to know how far these stories spread and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we'll return to the summer of 1973, trace the decades-long investigation, and uncover the breakthrough that stunned all of Arizona, Phoenix's coldest case finally speaking out. This is a story of loss, persistence, deception, and justice delayed, but never denied. Summer of 1973, Phoenix was immersed in the dry, scorching heat of the Arizona desert. Concrete roads shimmered in the sunlight, fine dust clung to windows, and the wind blowing through the Palm Avenue suburb was only enough to rustle a few bare palm fronds. This residential area was quiet, mostly middle-class families, retirees and state clerks, with steady, uneventful lives. Downtown, the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory, the region's prestigious ballet academy, was entering its most tense phase before the performance season. In the rehearsal rooms filled with the smell of rosin and the steady tapping of shoes on wooden floors, Ashley Crane, 24 years old, stood out with her slender figure and strict discipline, completing the final rehearsal of the season. She had worked for months on her first lead role in her career, and that night, while other dancers stayed to chat, Ashley quickly packed up, put her ballet shoes, silk scarf and notebook into her old canvas bag, and said goodbye to everyone with a brief smile. A colleague later recalled that she seemed tired and quieter than usual, but no one noticed, because at that time, late evenings in the arts world were full of stress. In the parking lot, the lights of the silver Ford Galaxy turned on. She started the car, left the lot, heading south through Central Avenue and the roads around the base of South Mountain, a sparsely populated area with only a few scattered farms and all-night gas stations. As the city clocks passed midnight, no one knew exactly where Ashley had gone or what happened on that stretch of road. That night, her small house on Palm Avenue still had the porch light on. Her mother, Alicia Ward, living in the Sunland Park area a few miles away, was used to her daughter coming home late after rehearsals. But by dawn, she began to feel uneasy. The first calls went unanswered. The morning passed, the phone still silent. By noon, Alicia drove to the theater to ask, but colleagues said Ashley had left right after the evening rehearsal the previous day. Unable to find her daughter anywhere, she continued to 2 hospitals near downtown Phoenix. But there were no admission records under the name Ashley Crane. By afternoon, after more than 18 hours without contact, Alicia pulled up in front of the local police station, clutching her purse tightly. In the lobby, she explained to the duty officer that her daughter had been missing since the previous night, leaving no message, no signs of voluntary departure. The middle-aged officer looked up into her tired eyes, then carefully placed a blank report form on the desk. He asked her to describe the last time she saw her daughter and noted every detail slowly. The report was received in the sweltering afternoon of July 18, 1973, clearly stating Ashley Crane, female, 24 years old, occupation ballet dancer, out of contact for more than 24 hours. The duty officer forwarded the file to the Missing Persons Unit, where the initial process was activated. The information provided by the victim's mother drew attention. Ashley was an adult with a stable job, no history of running away, no debts, and was in the process of preparing for her first major performance. Police quickly checked hospitals and medical facilities within the city limits. No place recorded a patient named Ashley Crane on the night of July 17 or the morning of July 18. The next morning, the internal report was transferred to the Civilian Investigation Department. Preliminary background showed Ashley lived with her husband, Douglas Crane, 54 years old, a retired aerospace engineer. According to the mother, their marriage was not stable. Douglas wanted his wife to quit working to settle into family life, while Ashley spent most of her time at the theater. Personal data was reviewed. She had never left Phoenix for more than 2 days, had no close friends in other states, bank account intact. Those factors ruled out the possibility of running away or voluntarily leaving the city. At noon, police called the Palm Avenue house for verification. Douglas Crane answered calmly, saying he knew nothing about the disappearance and thought his wife might be with friends. When asked about the last time he saw Ashley, he replied the evening before when she went to work, not remembering the exact time. The calm attitude raised suspicion for the duty officer. A team was sent to the house for a direct meeting. The report noted that the house was neat, doors normally locked, no signs of struggle. Douglas continued to assert they had no serious conflicts, but neighbors reported hearing arguments on the night of the 17th, around the time Ashley left the theater. Meanwhile, the victim's mother returned to the police station with a letter her daughter had sent her a few weeks earlier, which included the line, "Things at home are becoming uncomfortable. I need to focus on work to avoid thinking too much." The words were light, but when compared to the husband's statement, police began to suspect this could be a disappearance with personal factors. The Phoenix Ballet Conservatory was also contacted to verify Ashley's itinerary on her last day. The academy director confirmed she was at the rehearsal, left the theater in the evening, driving alone southward. A colleague remembered her being in a hurry, as if avoiding something. This data was added to the preliminary report and sent to command. That afternoon, an internal meeting of the Phoenix Police Department took place with investigators from Maricopa County in attendance. After comparing all statements and circumstances, the lieutenant in charge of the shift proposed classifying the case as missing person with suspicious elements. The decision was approved. By evening, the official criminal investigation team was formed. Detective Raymond Holt, 41 years old, who had participated in many missing persons cases in the South Mountain area, was assigned to lead. After reading the entire report, Holt noted on the first page, "Missing person has stable record, unlikely voluntary departure. Need to verify route from theater to Palm Avenue, and husband's statement." On July 19th, the case file was entered as case #73-4471, classified missing person with potential foul play. A copy was sent to the South Mountain Coordination Unit for assistance in searching for the vehicle and determining Ashley Crane's final travel route. From that point, her name was no longer on the regular missing persons list, but officially recorded as the center of a criminal investigation. Morning of July 20th, 1973, right after the file was classified as missing person with suspicious elements, the Phoenix Police Department launched a large-scale search plan. Participating forces included patrol units, local rescue teams, and volunteer groups from the Palm Avenue community. The coordination room created a map of Ashley Crane's usual travel areas, focusing on the route connecting downtown, where the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory was located, to the southern residential area where she lived. The map was divided into search grids, with each group responsible for one area: main roads, vacant lots, bridges, culverts, and drainage ditches along South Mountain. Under the nearly 40 degrees Celsius sun, groups moved slowly, scanning every suspicious point along the road, while patrol helicopters observed the entire route from the air. The first search team departed from downtown Phoenix early in the morning, traveling along Central Avenue, where Ashley was last seen on the night of July 17th. Every stop was marked, from all-night gas stations to parking lots and roadside stores. Investigators went to each place to ask questions, carrying a portrait photo of the victim. A clerk at a gas station said he didn't remember seeing any Ford Galaxy stop that night, but confirmed hearing an engine sound heading toward South Mountain around late hours. In the Palm Avenue residential area, police knocked on every door, asking neighbors. Many said they recognized Ashley, still saw her going to work every morning, but no one had seen her since Tuesday evening. A neighbor, living across from 1142 Palm Avenue, said he saw car lights turn on in the yard that evening, but didn't know if anyone was in the vehicle. By the afternoon of the same day, the search still yielded no promising signs. Detective Raymond Holt, in charge of the investigation, decided to expand the range 5 more miles south, including the edge of South Mountain, where there were many dirt roads and abandoned structures. Teams were reassigned by route, each group carrying detailed terrain-marked maps, coordinating between police forces and civilian rescue teams. In the internal report, Holt noted, "Priority objective: locate the vehicle. The car may have been abandoned or hidden. Higher probability of finding it within the South Mountain road range." On July 21st, around mid-morning, a call was transferred to the police switchboard from a resident named Harold Jennings, living on the southern edge of the city. He reported that while driving along an old dirt road leading into South Mountain, he saw a silver car parked off to the side of the road, door ajar, apparently with no one inside. The location was described as about 10 miles from Palm Avenue, on a sparsely traveled stretch. The tip was immediately verified. A task force consisting of 3 police officers and a forensics team from the Phoenix Police Department was dispatched to the South Mountain edge to conduct a scene examination where Ashley Crane's Ford Galaxy was discovered. Early sunlight slanted across the red dust-covered ground, the stifling desert air making the work grueling from the start of the day. On the side of the dirt road, the silver car remained in place, slightly tilted to the right, driver's door ajar, a fine layer of dust covering the surface. The forensics team leader, technician Harold Sutton, began the documentation process. He and his colleagues photographed the vehicle overall from 4 directions, measured the distance from the car's position to the road edge, then continued with detailed filming of each area: tires, door handles, dashboard, and front seats. The surrounding ground was marked with small stakes to define the evidence collection boundary. From the car to the road edge, the ground was flat, with no second set of tire tracks, no drag marks. The forensics team initially concluded the vehicle stopped here naturally, not pushed or towed. Upon opening the driver's door, Sutton noted the lock was not engaged, keys still in the ignition. The driver's seat was pulled forward, rearview mirror adjusted leftward, indicating the person inside was of height comparable to the victim. On the front floor, a beige silk scarf and a thick, dark, leather-bound notebook lay close together, with no signs of disturbance. On the passenger seat was an old pair of ballet shoes, ribbons loosely tied. All items matched the description of personal belongings that Ashley's mother had provided to police. Upon closer inspection, the forensics team found no traces of blood, sweat, or other bodily fluids on the seats, steering wheel, or door handles. The interior surfaces were clean. No scratches, no signs of struggle. Windows were fully rolled up. No broken glass. The temperature inside the car was high from sun exposure, but no unusual odors beyond old plastic and heated upholstery. Sutton used tweezers to collect a small item from the driver's seat, a short gray hair stuck to the fabric near the headrest. The hair sample was sealed in a numbered evidence bag and sent immediately to the mobile lab for origin determination. Outside the vehicle, the ground was hard and dry, interspersed with fine red sand streaks, showing only small shoe prints leading from the driver's door to the road edge, then disappearing, no returning footprints. About 2 meters behind the car, the team discovered faint high-heel hook marks, but not clear enough to determine size. Sutton believed the prints may have been blurred by wind and heat. He requested photographs for documentation, but did not consider it decisive evidence. The left front tire was embedded deeper than the others, suggesting the car stopped in this position rather than being pushed. A thorough brake system check showed the pedals still firm, no slippage, brake light indicator halfway on. The entire vehicle showed no collision signs, no cuts or external impacts detected. These indicators ruled out a traffic accident. By midday, all collected samples including the hair, soil around the tires, and personal items were sealed, labeled with corresponding evidence codes. The vehicle was towed to the police department's Central Inspection Center for further detailed examination. Before leaving the scene, Sutton and the forensics team took final overall photographs, including wind direction markers and terrain slope, for later reconstruction. In the report, he clearly stated, "No signs of struggle, no blood or obvious injuries, vehicle in intact condition. Lock and key status indicate intentional abandonment. No factors suggesting an accident." Late afternoon, the entire preliminary report along with scene photos was sent to Detective Raymond Holt's office downtown. Holt reviewed each photo, particularly pausing at the image of the car lying isolated in the arid land, surrounded by a single set of tire tracks. He underlined a short note on the file's first page: "Not an accident. No collision. Intentional abandonment." With this discovery, Ashley Crane's disappearance now had its first evidentiary foundation. A quiet scene but concealing many unanswered questions. Morning of July 23, 1973. 2 days after Ashley Crane's Ford Galaxy was discovered at the edge of South Mountain, The Phoenix Police Department sent an official summons for Douglas Crane to come in for questioning. He arrived on time, alone, neatly dressed in a white shirt, khaki pants, with the serious appearance of someone formerly in aerospace engineering. The interrogation took place in Room 3 of the Criminal Investigation Area, led by Detective Raymond Holt, with a clerk taking minutes. Holt began with basic questions: the last time he saw his wife, her daily habits, and their relationship in recent times. Douglas stated that on the evening of July 17th, Ashley left the house around close to 7 o'clock, carrying her usual canvas bag and saying she was going to a rehearsal at the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory. He insisted there was nothing unusual in her behavior. She was normal, just seemed tired, he said. Voice even, eyes avoiding Holt's direct gaze. Afterward, according to his statement, Douglas stayed home alone until about 9:30 in the evening, then drove to the aircraft hangar where he used to work to check some old blueprints. He said he stayed at the hangar until late, then went home to sleep, not seeing his wife again after she left. When Holt asked about their relationship, Douglas answered briefly, "We were fine." He claimed there were no serious arguments, just small marital misunderstandings. However, his responses tended to evade when asked specifically about finances and daily life. Holt noticed his voice clearly changed when mentioning Ashley's work. He said, "She was too focused on the ballet company, always there. I think she needed to rest." The phrase "needed to rest" was recorded verbatim in the minutes as a noteworthy detail. To verify the alibi, police contacted the hangar manager where Douglas used to work. The manager confirmed he came to the hangar a few times a month, despite being retired, but didn't remember seeing him that evening. The hangar's security log also showed no entries or exits under Douglas Crane's name between 8 p.m. and midnight on July 17. When asked about this detail, Douglas appeared flustered, saying maybe the night guard forgot to log it, then shifted the conversation to how he was trying to help his wife start a small business at home. Holt noted no clear emotional reactions throughout the interrogation, only that the man persistently maintained a cold and sparing demeanor. When asked to describe the next morning, Douglas said he woke up at 8, didn't see Ashley, and thought she had gone to rehearsal early. He didn't contact the ballet company, nor call his mother-in-law, just waited because he believed she would return. This behavior raised Holt's suspicion, as according to Alicia Ward, the family was the first to notice the disappearance and proactively reported it to police. Douglas denied being indifferent, saying he didn't want to make a big deal when the situation wasn't clear. In the interrogation transcript, Holt asked directly about the victim's car. "Do you know that your wife's Ford Galaxy was found at South Mountain?" Douglas replied, "I didn't know. She often drove somewhere to relax. Maybe the car broke down." When asked if he went with her that evening, he answered firmly, "No." Police noted the entire statement, while observing his closed demeanor and carefully measured tone. The interrogation lasted nearly 2 hours. While signing the minutes, Douglas requested to reread the entire statement, editing a few minor details related to the time of leaving the house and staying at the hangar until late. After leaving the room, Holt and 2 investigators compared the statement with actual facts. The entire time period from 8 p.m. to midnight on July 17, when Ashley was last seen, had no witnesses confirming Douglas's whereabouts. His alibi was thus considered invalid. The internal report, drafted by Holt the same day, concluded, subject Douglas Crane was the last person in contact with the victim before disappearance. Statement inconsistent, alibi unverified, cooperative attitude but evasive on details. Need continued surveillance and additional evidence collection. The report's conclusion included a handwritten note, not in the official form. High likelihood husband involved, classify as person of interest. That evening, the file on Douglas Crane was separated, assigned a sub-number in the Phoenix Criminal Investigation Room system. From a figure called in only for information support, he became the case's focus. The only person with direct connection to Ashley in her final hours before vanishing. Morning of July 24, 1973. After reviewing Douglas Crane's inconsistent statement and the gap in his alibi, Detective Raymond Holt submitted a request to the Maricopa County Court for a search warrant of his private residence on Palm Avenue. The request was approved the same morning, with the reason necessary to verify information in a disappearance with criminal elements. The investigation team consisted of 4 officers and 2 forensics technicians. The small house stood isolated, surrounded by a wooden fence and a front yard with a few cactus clusters. When the convoy arrived, Douglas was present, appearing calm, opening the door, and requesting to observe within permitted range. Holt read the warrant contents clearly, requiring him to sit in the living room while the specialized team carried out the task. The search began in the living room, neatly arranged, items purposefully placed. A technician noted no thick dust on furniture, indicating the house had been cleaned recently. However, the excessive neatness drew attention. On the bookshelf next to the desk, Holt found a folder of invoices and receipts in a plastic cover, including a cement and construction materials purchase receipt, dated July 18, 1973. Just one day after Ashley was reported missing. The invoice clearly stated 3 bags Portland cement, 4 plywood sheets, reinforcing wood strips. The materials store was in South Phoenix, about 8 miles from his house. Holt requested the document be photographed and a seizure record made. Continuing to check the kitchen and rear storage area, the investigation team discovered an unused .38 caliber ammunition box in a wooden cabinet drawer, next to some mechanical tools. Douglas explained that it was leftover old ammo from when I worked at the hangar, but when asked for a firearm permit, he could not produce a valid registration. Police noted it, sealed the ammo box, and added it to the temporary evidence list. In the master bedroom, everything appeared carefully cleaned. Fresh bed sheets, shiny floors. However, when a technician pulled open the vanity drawer, they discovered a torn wedding photo. Ashley's face ripped away, leaving only Douglas in formal attire. The torn paper was placed among old magazines, with faint fingerprints on the edge. Forensics used tweezers to remove it, placed it in a separate evidence bag, and numbered it sequentially. When Holt asked about the photo, Douglas answered briefly, "She did that. I didn't throw it away because I still hoped she'd return." The statement was recorded verbatim in the minutes. In the small office behind the kitchen, on the wooden desk was an unfinished handwritten letter, paper crumpled, handwriting clearly Ashley's. The letter began with the line, "Mom, I feel suffocated every time," then stopped midway, no date. The rest was blank, no signature. The ink was still fresh, not fully faded. Holt assessed it might be a letter to her mother or someone close, but unfinished. The letter was carefully sealed, with the note document directly related to victim. When the forensics team moved to the backyard area, they noted signs of recently disturbed soil near the west wall corner. The ground was darker than surroundings, with shovel-smoothing marks. However, without clear grounds for excavation, Holt only requested photographs and coordinate measurements for the file. While the team worked, Douglas sat in the living room, neither asking questions nor objecting. He spoke only once, when seeing police take the invoice folder. "Those things have nothing to do with this case. I was just repairing the house." By late afternoon, the search process was complete. The seized evidence list included 1 cement and construction materials purchase invoice dated July 18, 1973, 2 intact .38 ammo box, 3 torn wedding photo, 4 unfinished handwritten letter suspected written by victim, 5 photographs of recently disturbed soil area behind the house. In the report sent to the central office, Holt wrote a preliminary conclusion. Evidence found at suspect's residence indicates unusual activity occurring immediately after victim's disappearance. Financial and construction materials evidence requires further origin verification. Possible subject, cleaned and rearranged house to erase traces. Recommend tight surveillance and comparison with prior statements. The final line in the report was underlined in red, possibility of evidence concealment. The evidence box was transferred to the Phoenix Police Department's temporary storage that night. Sealed in 3 layers per procedure, with the search warrant completed, Douglas Crane was allowed to remain at home, but restricted from leaving the city until the investigation yielded further results. In his investigation notebook, Holt wrote a brief sentence to close the long workday. "The house is too clean inside, and that very cleanliness is the most suspicious thing." July 25, 1973. All evidence seized from Douglas Crane's house was transferred to the Phoenix Police Department's forensics lab, located in the downtown area. This was one of the few labs in Arizona at the time capable of performing basic chemical analysis on scene samples. Under the supervision of Chief Technician Dr. Leonard Briggs, the forensics team began examining each item according to standard identification procedures of the era. All samples were photographed, numbered, and logged in sequence. Evidence #1, materials purchase invoice, #2.38 ammo box, #3, torn wedding photo, #4, unfinished letter, and #5, samples from the kitchen, including a glass cup still containing residue of a pale yellow liquid. Since modern techniques like DNA analysis or mass spectrometry were not yet common, 1973 identification work relied mainly on chemical tests, microscopy, and sample comparison. The glass cup was considered the most important item in the evidence series because it could contain biological traces or chemicals. Under the microscope, Dr. Briggs discovered a thin layer of dried residue around the rim, ivory white in color. This sample was dissolved in distilled water, then tested with mandolin reagent, a common method at the time to detect sedatives and barbiturates. The result was clear: the solution turned dark brown, indicating traces of phenobarbital, a strong sedative commonly prescribed for insomnia or mild nervous disorders. Police records noted that phenobarbital could cause central nervous system depression if used in high doses, potentially leading to loss of consciousness or respiratory arrest. The forensics lab continued checking other items for similar traces, but found no additional chemical samples in the rest of the kitchen. In the preliminary report, Briggs wrote, "Dried liquid sample remaining in glass cup contains clear barbiturate content. Concentration cannot be determined, but strong reaction sufficient to rule out cross-contamination." When the results were sent to Detective Holt's office, he immediately requested comparison with Douglas Crane's medical information. Luke's hospital data in Phoenix records showed Douglas had been prescribed phenobarbital for a short period a year earlier for insomnia, but the prescription had expired. The reappearance of the drug in his home samples, coinciding with his wife's disappearance, drew special attention from the investigation team. Holt requested verification if Douglas had repurchased the drug. When asked, he replied that there were still a few old pills in the medicine cabinet and occasionally used them to sleep easier. The explanation was recorded, but did not reduce suspicion. The forensics lab also examined the .38 ammo box seized from the house. Results showed it was common lead ammunition. No signs of use or modification. The torn wedding photo and handwritten letter were checked under ultraviolet light for stains or faint fingerprints, but due to technological limitations, results were unclear. All were resealed and stored in the official evidence cabinet. Briggs recommended focusing on the chemical sample, considering it the only abnormal factor that could link to criminal behavior. In the summary report sent to Holt on July 27, the forensics lab recorded: 1. Glass cup sample contains phenobarbital barbiturate traces, identified via mandolin reaction. 2. Cement purchase invoice shows no unusual chemicals, only common grease stains. 3. .38 ammo box, unused, no firing marks. 4. Wedding photo and letter show no blood or biological signs. Preliminary conclusion: no direct lethal evidence, but phenobarbital discovery in household drink is abnormal, requires further investigation. Holt read each line carefully, then added his own note. Douglas Crane had prior phenobarbital prescription. Cannot rule out misuse of this drug, possibly to control or sedate victim. However, without a body, specific consequences cannot be determined. That afternoon, Holt met Briggs for direct discussion. Briggs confirmed the residue amount was strong enough to prove the drug was mixed into a drink, but exact timing or concentration could not be determined due to the small sample. He said, "We can only say someone used this cup to hold a phenobarbital solution. What it relates to cannot yet be concluded." That answer made Holt understand that, technically, the case remained at the suspicion level. All evidence was resealed, labeled #734471 evidence, stored in the forensics lab's cold storage to prevent degradation. In the end-of-day report sent to the Phoenix Police Department, Holt wrote briefly, "Initial test results confirm presence of strong sedative compound in victim's home. Douglas Crane is the only person with access and history of using this drug. However, without a body, criminal act cannot be concluded. Recommend continued subject surveillance and await additional analysis results." The final line in Holt's handwritten record had a short sentence, underlined in red pencil: "Not an accident. Intentional intervention, but insufficient evidence to charge." July 28, 1973. After receiving the forensics lab report and finding no new evidence in Douglas Crane's house, Detective Raymond Holt directed expansion of the search around the South Mountain area, where Ashley's Ford Galaxy was discovered. This search was significantly larger in scale, involving over 40 people, Maricopa County Police, Phoenix rescue teams, and local volunteers. A field headquarters was set up right at the entrance to the dirt road where the car was abandoned, serving as a personnel assembly and information coordination point. The objective was clearly defined: scan a 5-mile radius around the scene for any remaining traces, clothing, belongings, or Ashley Crane's body. As the sun rose, the desert air was already scorching. Rescue jeeps lined up one after another on the dirt road, carrying water containers, maps, and walkie-talkies. Holt stood beside a large map spread on a vehicle hood, dividing teams into 3 directions: east through low-lying areas with dry washes, west along the low mountain slope, and south through the rugged rocky hills. Each team was equipped with marking stakes, measuring tapes, and ordered to report any suspicious object, no matter how small. By mid-morning, temperatures neared 38 degrees Celsius. Red sand blown by wind obscured the view, but groups continued moving in lines, 10 meters apart, scanning strips of terrain. The second team, responsible for the western area and led by Lieutenant Miller, was the first to discover a noteworthy object. Around 11 a.m., a young volunteer reported seeing a pink fabric scrap caught on low thorn bushes about 300 meters from the dirt road. Upon closer inspection, they identified it as a thin satin piece, torn, covered in dust and dry thorns, matching the color of fabric commonly used by the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory in performance costumes. Miller immediately sealed the evidence, marked coordinates, and reported to Command Center. Holt quickly arrived at the scene, visually inspected, and confirmed the fabric matched the type Ashley wore during her final rehearsal: pale pink with silver threading along the edge. About an hour later, in the southern direction, the third search team found a single ballet slipper lying tilted in a shallow rock crevice. The shoe was soft leather, ribbon soiled, and one end broken. On the toe remained gray stage floor paint streaks, matching the type used at the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory. The evidence was documented, photographed in place, then brought to the center. When compared to items recovered from the victim's car, the old ballet shoes on the passenger seat, Holt noted this was a different pair, likely the actual performance shoes Ashley used in rehearsal. Field technicians conducted preliminary analysis on site. They noted the fabric scrap and shoe were not near each other, but over a mile apart, and both in unnatural positions, the fabric caught at about 90 centimeters height. Not where an item would land if blown by wind. The shoe wedged between 2 rocks, as if placed rather than randomly dropped. No slide or drag marks nearby. Initial conclusion: evidence had been moved, possibly carried to this area, after the victim's disappearance. The mobile forensics team took soil samples, fiber samples, and photographed the entire scene from multiple angles. Everything was sealed and labeled under case hash 734471 with sub-evidence codes SM01 and SM02. As the sun began to set, teams returned to field headquarters to compile data. The day's initial report showed no biological signs, no blood, hair or human tissue in the area. Beneath the dry soil, no burial or recent mechanical disturbance. The next day, the search continued under even harsher conditions. Temperatures reached 43 degrees Celsius, strong winds whipped sand and obscured visibility. Nevertheless, forces persisted, expanding the range 2 more miles southwest. They scanned rock crevices, thorn bushes, and old drainage ditches, using probes to check for soil disturbance. Rescue helicopters circled overhead, taking aerial photos of the area, but found nothing further. By afternoon, Holt held a quick meeting with team leaders and agreed to temporarily halt the operation due to no new signs. In the summary report of July 30, 1973, Holt wrote, "Expanded search around South Mountain completed within 5-mile radius from victim's vehicle position. 2 pieces of evidence discovered: pink fabric scrap and single ballet slipper, both likely belonging to Ashley Crane. No body or biological signs found. Scene analysis indicates evidence was moved, not naturally fallen. Conclusion: high probability of external intervention. The evidence was transported to the Phoenix Police Department, sealed in a separate storage box, labeled hash 734471 evidence. In the handover minutes, Holt added a note: possibility victim was removed from this area or traces erased within first 48 hours. By the end of 1973, after months of thoroughly searching the entire South Mountain area and surroundings, the investigation into Ashley Crane's disappearance yielded no results. No new witnesses, no additional traces or biological evidence discovered. Volunteer search teams had withdrawn. Police forces gradually reduced personnel, leaving only the Maricopa County Investigation Unit to process old samples. For nearly half a year, Detective Raymond Holt and 2 associates reviewed every report, re-interviewed those who worked with Ashley, but all repeated the same: she left the July 17th rehearsal and was never seen again. In February 1974, Holt submitted a comprehensive report to the Phoenix Police Department. The nearly 200-page document detailed the case progression, evidence, interrogation minutes, and forensics results. In the final evaluation section, he wrote, "No new leads since July 30, 1973. Victim's location undetermined, no direct witnesses, no body. All existing evidence indicates suspicion only, insufficient for criminal basis." Upper Investigation Command reviewed and agreed to suspend field activities, transferring the file to inactive case status. Investigation paused due to lack of evidence. Before handing over the file, Holt personally rechecked every evidence item. The Ford Galaxy was moved to the Maricopa County Transportation impound lot, covered with a tarp for preservation. Smaller samples, pink fabric, ballet slipper, handwritten letter, invoice, and phenobarbital liquid sample, were resealed, labeled hash 734471 evidence, placed in a metal box. He requested the storage unit separate this file from regular missing persons cases and classify it under unconfirmed criminal suspicion. In his personal notebook, Holt wrote briefly, "High likelihood victim deceased. Preserve all evidence for re-examination when technology permits." Early March 1974, the final investigation team meeting was held at the county office. The internal report confirmed no legal basis to continue pursuing Douglas Crane, the husband, due to lack of direct evidence. He continued living at the Palm Avenue house, under covert surveillance for the first few months, but with no suspicious behavior. In periodic check-ins, he maintained, knowing nothing more, and still believing his wife would return. No flight attempts or asset transfers, leaving the prosecutor's office unable to proceed with charges. On March 15, 1974, Holt completed the temporary case closure report. In the summary section, he noted, "Current status, missing with criminal suspicion, victim unlocated, criminal elements suspected. No direct evidence for prosecution. Files stored per regulations may be reopened with new evidence. One copy was sent to the Phoenix Police Department, one to the prosecutor's office, and the original stored in the Maricopa County Evidence Vault safe, drawer 22B. By the end of that year, the Ashley Crane case evidence was transferred to the Phoenix Evidence Facility Central Storage, where backlogged items were preserved. Each box was labeled with metal tags, coded by year and initials. On the box lid, Holt added in pencil, "Do not close, keep open for future tracing." He then signed the transfer confirmation, ending all field investigation activities. As 1974 ended, Ashley Crane's disappearance gradually receded into Arizona's long list of unsolved cases. In the investigation room's logbook, the final entry related to case hash 734471 was dated December 2, 1974. No new developments. File investigation suspended. The evidence cabinet door closed, sealing a fruitless 6-month pursuit. The case officially entered absolute deadlock, becoming one of Phoenix's most haunting disappearances of the early 1970s. For many years after being classified as inactive case, file case hash 734471, Ashley Crane nearly faded into oblivion. The name remained quietly in the Phoenix Police Department's catalog, among hundreds of unsolved 1970s disappearances. In the storage log, the only note left by Detective Raymond Holt in 1974 remained unchanged. High likelihood victim deceased. Preserve evidence in dry conditions, avoid light. After Holt retired in the late 1980s, no one directly followed this file. The case became part of Maricopa County's old storage, a windowless concrete room holding thousands of coated metal boxes stacked like a graveyard of unfinished stories. From the mid-1980s to the late 1990s, Phoenix changed rapidly. Population surged, the city expanded, and pre-1980 cases were largely forgotten amid new workloads. Files before 1980 were gradually moved to central storage, reopened only by special order. In annual updated catalogs, the Ashley Crane case remained listed as missing with criminal suspicion, status no development. No one requested review, no further questions asked. Douglas Crane continued living quietly in Phoenix, surveillance file closed, and all data stalled at unprovable suspicion. In 1999, the Phoenix Police Department launched the Cold Case Initiative, a program to digitize and reclassify all pre-1985 backlog cases. The multi-year project aimed to convert paper data to electronic systems for preservation and easier access. When technicians opened old metal containers for inventory, they discovered evidence box hash 734471 evidence, still containing intact 1970s-era brown wax paper sealed bags tied with red wax string per old standards. Each bag bore Holt's signature and the Phoenix Forensics Lab seal. Despite over 25 years, evidence condition was remarkably good. Hair from the driver's seat, pink fabric, single ballet slipper, materials invoice, unfinished letter, and small cement sample bag. All were photographed, electronically cataloged, then stored in the cold case archive. Original case paperwork, interrogation minutes, handwritten notes, and scene maps were scanned and entered into the Phoenix PD Central Database. On May 17, 1999, the Ashley Crane case officially received a new electronic storage code, PHXCC 734471, marking the transition to cold case phase. The system's automated summary read, *case opened, 1973 investigation ceased, 1974 status, missing with criminal suspicion current, unsolved, cold case evidence, hair pink fabric, cement handwritten letter ballet slipper. Attached was Holt's original note, photocopied verbatim, preserve evidence, do not destroy. May be needed for future technical analysis. By 2009, when the cold case database was upgraded, The Ashley Crane file remained in the Phoenix Police Department's longest pending backlog. Evidence condition was rated stable, undamaged by environment. The old iron boxes, once personally stamped by Holt, still sat on shelf 3, row 17 of central storage, like a frozen memory fragment from the summer of 1973, a disappearance never closed, but never resolved. A field headquarters was set up right at the entrance to the dirt road where the car was abandoned, serving as a personnel assembly and information coordination point. The objective was clearly defined. Scan a 5-mile radius around the scene for any remaining traces, clothing, belongings, or Ashley Crane's body. As the sun rose, the desert air was already scorching. Rescue jeeps lined up one after another on the dirt road, carrying water containers, maps, and walkie-talkies. Holt stood beside a large map spread on a vehicle hood, dividing teams into 3 directions, east through low-lying areas with dry washes, west along the low mountain slope, and south through the rugged rocky hills. Each team was equipped with marking stakes, measuring tapes, and ordered to report any suspicious object, no matter how small. By mid-morning, temperatures neared 38 degrees Celsius, red sand blown by wind obscured the view, but groups continued moving in lines, 10 meters apart, scanning strips of terrain. The second team, responsible for the western area and led by Lieutenant Miller, was the first to discover a noteworthy object. Around 11 a.m., a young volunteer reported seeing a pink fabric scrap caught on low thorn bushes about 300 meters from the dirt road. Upon closer inspection, they identified it as a thin satin piece, torn, covered in dust and dry thorns, matching the color of fabric commonly used by the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory in performance costumes. Miller immediately sealed the evidence, marked coordinates, and reported to Command Center. Holt quickly arrived at the scene, visually inspected, and confirmed the fabric matched the type Ashley wore during her final rehearsal. Pale pink with silver threading along the edge. About an hour later, in the southern direction, the third search team found a single ballet slipper lying tilted in a shallow rock crevice. The shoe was soft leather, ribbon soiled, and one end broken. On the toe remained gray stage floor paint streaks, matching the type used at the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory. The evidence was documented, photographed in place, then brought to the center. When compared to items recovered from the victim's car, the old ballet shoes on the passenger seat, Holt noted this was a different pair, likely the actual performance shoes Ashley used in rehearsal. Field technicians conducted preliminary analysis on site. They noted the fabric scrap and shoe were not near each other, but over a mile apart, and both in unnatural positions, the fabric caught at about 90 centimeters height. Not where an item would land if blown by wind. The shoe wedged between 2 rocks, as if placed rather than randomly dropped. No slide or drag marks nearby. Initial conclusion: evidence had been moved, possibly carried to this area, after the victim's disappearance. The mobile forensics team took soil samples, fiber samples, and photographed the entire scene from multiple angles. Everything was sealed and labeled under case hash 734471 with sub-evidence codes SM01 and SM02. As the sun began to set, teams returned to field headquarters to compile data. The day's initial report showed no biological signs, no blood, hair or human tissue in the area. Beneath the dry soil, no burial or recent mechanical disturbance. The next day, the search continued under even harsher conditions. Temperatures reached 43 degrees Celsius, strong winds whipped sand and obscured visibility. Nevertheless, forces persisted, expanding the range 2 more miles southwest. They scanned rock crevices, thorn bushes, and old drainage ditches, using probes to check for soil disturbance. Rescue helicopters circled overhead, taking aerial photos of the area, but found nothing further. By afternoon, Holt held a quick meeting with team leaders and agreed to temporarily halt the operation due to no new signs. In the summary report of July 30th, 1973, Holt wrote, "Expanded search around South Mountain completed within 5-mile radius from victim's vehicle position. 2 pieces of evidence discovered: pink fabric scrap and single ballet slipper, both likely belonging to Ashley Crane. No body or biological signs found. Scene analysis indicates evidence was moved, not naturally fallen." Conclusion: high probability of external intervention. The evidence was transported to the Phoenix Police Department, sealed in a separate storage box, labeled #734471 evidence. In the handover minutes, Holt added a note: "Possibility victim was removed from this area or traces erased within first 48 hours. By the end of 1973, after months of thoroughly searching the entire South Mountain area and surroundings, the investigation into Ashley Crane's disappearance yielded no results. No new witnesses, no additional traces or biological evidence discovered. Volunteer search teams had withdrawn. Police forces gradually reduced personnel, leaving only the Maricopa County Investigation Unit to process old samples. For nearly half a year, Detective Raymond Holt and 2 associates reviewed every report, re-interviewed those who worked with Ashley, but all repeated the same: she left the July 17th rehearsal and was never seen again. In February 1974, Holt submitted a comprehensive report to the Phoenix Police Department. The nearly 200-page document detailed the case progression, evidence, interrogation minutes, and forensics results. In the final evaluation section, he wrote, "No new leads since July 30th, 1973. Victim's location undetermined, no direct witnesses, no body. All existing evidence indicates suspicion only, insufficient for criminal basis." Upper Investigation Command reviewed and agreed to suspend field activities, transferring the file to inactive case status. Investigation paused due to lack of evidence. Before handing over the file, Holt personally rechecked every evidence item. The Ford Galaxy was moved to the Maricopa County Transportation impound lot, covered with a tarp for preservation. Smaller samples, pink fabric, ballet slipper, handwritten letter, invoice, and phenobarbital liquid sample, were resealed, labeled #734471 evidence, placed in a metal box. He requested the storage unit separate this file from regular missing persons cases and classify it under unconfirmed criminal suspicion. In his personal notebook, Holt wrote briefly, "High likelihood victim deceased. Preserve all evidence for re-examination when technology permits." Early March 1974, the final investigation team meeting was held at the county office. The internal report confirmed no legal basis to continue pursuing Douglas Crane, the husband, due to lack of direct evidence. He continued living at the Palm Avenue house, under covert surveillance for the first few months, but with no suspicious behavior. In periodic check-ins, he maintained, knowing nothing more, and still believing his wife would return. No flight attempts or asset transfers, leaving the prosecutor's office unable to proceed with charges. On March 15, 1974, Holt completed the temporary case closure report. In the summary section, he noted, "Current status, missing with criminal suspicion, victim unlocated, criminal elements suspected. No direct evidence for prosecution. Files stored per regulations, may be reopened with new evidence." 1 copy was sent to the Phoenix Police Department, 1 to the prosecutor's office, and the original stored in the Maricopa County Evidence Vault safe, drawer 22B. By the end of that year, the Ashley Crane case evidence was transferred to the Phoenix Evidence Facility Central Storage, where backlogged items were preserved. Each box was labeled with metal tags, coded by year and initials. On the box lid, Holt added in pencil, "Do not close, keep open for future tracing." He then signed the transfer confirmation, ending all field investigation activities. As 1974 ended, Ashley Crane's disappearance gradually receded into Arizona's long list of unsolved cases. In the investigation room's logbook, the final entry related to case #734471 was dated December 2, 1974. No new developments. File investigation suspended. The evidence cabinet door closed. sealing a fruitless 6-month pursuit. The case officially entered absolute deadlock, becoming one of Phoenix's most haunting disappearances of the early 1970s. For many years after being classified as inactive case, file case hash 734471, Ashley Crane nearly faded into oblivion. The name remained quietly in the Phoenix Police Department's catalog, among hundreds of unsolved 1970s disappearances. In the storage log, the only note left by Detective Raymond Holt in 1974 remained unchanged. High likelihood victim deceased. Preserve evidence in dry conditions, avoid light. After Holt retired in the late 1980s, no one directly followed this file. The case became part of Maricopa County's old storage, a windowless concrete room holding thousands of coated metal boxes stacked like a graveyard of unfinished stories. From the mid-1980s to the late 1990s, Phoenix changed rapidly. Population surged, the city expanded, and pre-1980 cases were largely forgotten amid new workloads. Files before 1980 were gradually moved to central storage, reopened only by special order. In annual updated catalogs, the Ashley Crane case remained listed as missing with criminal suspicion, status no development. No one requested review, no further questions asked. Douglas Crane continued living quietly in Phoenix, surveillance file closed, and all data stalled at unprovable suspicion. In 1999, the Phoenix Police Department launched the Cold Case Initiative, a program to digitize and reclassify all pre-1985 backlog cases. The multi-year project aimed to convert paper data to electronic systems for preservation and easier access. When technicians opened old metal containers for inventory, they discovered evidence box hash 734471 evidence, still containing intact 1970s-era brown wax paper sealed bags tied with red wax string per old standards. Each bag bore Holt's signature and the Phoenix Forensics Lab seal. Despite over 25 years, evidence condition was remarkably good. Hair from the driver's seat, pink fabric, single ballet slipper, materials invoice, unfinished letter, and small cement sample bag. All were photographed, electronically cataloged, then stored in the cold case archive. Original case paperwork, interrogation minutes, handwritten notes, and scene maps were scanned and entered into the Phoenix PD Central Database. On May 17, 1999, the Ashley Crane case officially received a new electronic storage code, PHXCC 734471, marking the transition to cold case phase. The system's automated summary read, *case opened, 1973 investigation ceased, 1974 status, missing with criminal suspicion current, unsolved, cold case evidence, hair pink fabric, cement handwritten letter ballet slipper. Attached was Holt's original note, photocopied verbatim, preserve evidence, do not destroy. May be needed for future technical analysis. By 2009, when the cold case database was upgraded, the Ashley Crane file remained in the Phoenix Police Department's longest pending backlog. Evidence condition was rated stable, undamaged by environment. The old iron boxes, once personally stamped by Holt, still sat on shelf 3, row 17 of central storage, like a frozen memory fragment from the summer of 1973, a disappearance never closed, but never resolved. On February 15, the entire evidence package, coded #734471, was transferred to Tucson, accompanied by copies of the original file and Dr. Leonard Briggs' 1973 forensic report. Moreno signed the handover with a final note, starting again where Holt left off. As the dedicated vehicle pulled out of the Phoenix Police Department parking lot, the winter morning light glinted off the metal container, reflecting the faint printed words, Cold Case Evidence, PHXPD. After more than 35 years lying dormant in storage, the Ashley Crane file was officially reopened. With Sergeant Lisa Moreno's signature, case PHXCC 734471 once again entered active investigation. But this time, the technology was different, and hope for uncovering the truth was no longer as remote as before. The Arizona State Forensic Lab in Tucson received evidence package #734471 on February 17, 2010. Under the supervision of Dr. Laura Chen, head of DNA analysis, the specialist team began unsealing each sample in a sterile room, video recording the entire process. Each evidence bag bearing 1973 red wax seals was carefully opened, samples divided and assigned new modern identifiers: AC01, AC02, and AC03. Given the case's age over 30 years, the team used degraded DNA extraction techniques, allowing gene sequence recovery even from heavily aged evidence. In the first 3 weeks, the team focused on the pink fabric scrap recovered from the South Mountain area in 1973. Under an electron microscope, they detected microscopic epidermal tissue adhering to the hem threads, undetectable by 1970s methods. The sample was treated with protein-dissolving enzymes, then subjected to PCR DNA amplification. After 4 testing cycles, results were clear. DNA extracted from the fabric tissue matched 99.97% with Ashley Crane's reference DNA. Reconstructed from hairbrush and personal items her mother submitted to police in 1973 and preserved in the file. This was confirmed via STR method, ruling out error. The interim report sent to Phoenix PD stated, DNA from evidence AC01 originates from victim Ashley Crane. By early March, the team shifted to the gray hair strands from the Ford Galaxy driver's seat. Though rootless, they applied mitochondrial DNA comparison, standard for degraded or non-nuclear samples. Analysis showed the mitochondrial DNA sequence fully matched Douglas Crane's profile, the husband, already in the state medical database from a 2002 pathology test. Matching reached 100% at 16 loci, with no sequence variants. Conclusion: gray hairs on driver's seat belonged to Douglas Crane, proving the subject was in the vehicle near or immediately after the victim's disappearance. The third and most critical discovery came from the 1973 cement sample from Douglas's backyard. At the time, forensic tech could only identify it as common building material. However, reanalysis via mass spectrometry and mineral DNA extraction revealed embedded fibrous tissue and human keratin cells deep in the set cement particles. Successful micro-DNA extraction and comparison with Ashley's reference showed full matching at 15 STR gene loci. Result reliability was 1 in 1.2 billion, virtually impossible by chance. This was deemed the first physical evidence indicating the victim's body had direct contact with cement at Douglas Crane's home. On March 18, 2010, Dr. Chen sent a 26-page comprehensive test results report to the Phoenix Cold Case Unit. It opened with bold text, DNA forensic results, case hash 734471 summary. 1. DNA on pink fabric matches victim Ashley Crane's reference sample. 2. Mitochondrial DNA in gray hairs matches Douglas Crane. 3. Cement sample contains human tissue with DNA matching the victim. Conclusion: high probability that the victim's body was placed or buried within Douglas Crane's property in direct contact with cement material during concealment. The report was printed in 3 copies, one to Phoenix PD, one retained in Tucson, and one forwarded to the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office. Upon reading the conclusion, Sergeant Lisa Moreno noted in the margin, file hash 734471 now has physical evidence confirming post-disappearance intervention. She immediately scheduled an urgent meeting with Phoenix PD leadership to present findings. In the March 22 meeting, Moreno detailed each point: victim's DNA on South Mountain fabric, Douglas's hair in the car, and human tissue in his home cement. Command listened in silence, as after over 30 years, this long-forgotten missing person case showed clear progress for the first time. A retired deputy who worked under Holt was invited. Upon hearing, he simply said he was right. Check the backyard again. On March 25, 2010, the report was marked confirmed, biological match, and entered into Phoenix PD's electronic files. On the system summary page, case status officially changed from cold case, inactive to cold case, active homicide review. The final note, added by Sergeant Moreno in all caps, scientific evidence confirms, victim likely deceased, and body possibly buried within Douglas Crane's property. Site examination required. With DNA confirming human tissue origin, Ashley Crane's disappearance was no longer an undefined mystery in archives. After 37 years, scientific evidence finally returned the investigation to its starting point. The quiet little house on Palm Avenue, where every trace of the story began. On April 2, 2010, after receiving the Arizona State Forensic Lab's DNA report, Sergeant Lisa Moreno submitted a request to Maricopa County Court for a search and excavation warrant at 1142 Palm Avenue, the former Douglas Crane property. The filing stated, 1973 cement sample analysis shows human tissue matching victim Ashley Crane's DNA. Legal basis sufficient to confirm body possibly buried on premises. Judge Ruth Delgado, handling cold cases, approved that afternoon, authorizing full excavation of the backyard and main floor foundation. On April 6, the Phoenix forensic team coordinated with state crime scene technicians to begin. The house, now owned by another family since the 1980s, required owner notification and temporary relocation. That morning, equipment trucks and evidence vans filled the quiet street. Curious neighbors watched from behind fences. Moreno was on site early, directly overseeing. The focus area was the west backyard, where 1973 investigators noted freshly turned soil. Original Holt photos were compared, locations nearly matched. Current cement was newer, but uneven seams showed between pores. Technicians used ground-penetrating radar, detecting anomalous reflection at about 40 centimeters depth, suggesting a void or object under old cement. Excavation started at 9 a.m. Technicians hand-cut cement sections to avoid subsurface damage. Under desert sun, white dust clouded the air. After 2 hours, a second cement layer emerged, offset under the main, about 10 centimeters thick, with finer sand and small gravel mix, unlike the rest, inconsistent with later paving. As the second layer was lifted, an odd material appeared, shiny metal fragments in the cement. Forensic technician Angela Ruiz carefully extracted with tweezers into sunlight a broken clear crystal necklace, chain snapped, beads dusty but glinting. Nearby, as cement was peeled deeper by centimeters, a small yellowish-brown bone fragment, about 4 centimeters long, appeared under a cracked area. Moreno ordered halting mechanical digging, switching to hand trowels and soft brushes. Bit by bit, the foundation was peeled until a darker soil patch emerged, distinct from surroundings. Inside, beyond the initial bone, more fragments were found mixed in cement soil, all carefully collected into specialized trays. The process lasted until evening, with high-powered lights illuminating the fenced excavation. The next morning, April 7th, all evidence was transported to the Arizona State Forensic Lab in Tucson for analysis. The crystal necklace was cleaned, identified as common 1970s handmade jewelry matching a downtown Phoenix store, where Ashley bought accessories for her final performance. Bone samples underwent mitochondrial and carbon isotope genotyping, yielding clear results. DNA fully matched Ashley Crane's profile. The April 10, 2010, forensic report stated, 1. Small bone fragments from adult female, estimated 25 years old. 2. DNA matches victim Ashley Crane's reference sample. 3. Crystal necklace matches 1973. Personal item description. Conclusion. Evidence from Douglas Crane's backyard proves victim's body was present or buried on the property. Upon results, Sergeant Moreno reread Holt's 1974 note. Retain evidence may be needed for future technical analysis. The once obscure line now proved prophetic. She immediately convened an urgent meeting with Maricopa County prosecutors and Phoenix PD Command. On April 12, 2010, the Ashley Crane case, #734471, was officially reclassified from missing to homicide. Phoenix PD internal memo stated, based on DNA results and body discovery in Douglas Crane's backyard, criminal elements confirmed. File transferred to Special Criminal Investigation Unit. On her desk, Lisa Moreno placed a black and white photo of Ashley in her dance dress, stage lights glowing on her radiant face. She flipped to the file's first page, where Holt's words remained. Not an accident. Intentional intervention. Nearly 40 years later, his words were finally proven. And for the first time since summer 1973, Phoenix could affirm Ashley Crane was no longer missing. She had been found. On April 20, 2010, 1 week after the body was confirmed as Ashley Crane, the Phoenix Police Department's Special Investigation Team began crime scene reconstruction. Based on all data from both phases, 1973 original files, and modern DNA results. The reconstruction was supervised by Sergeant Lisa Moreno and 2 Arizona state forensic experts, aiming to establish a logical sequence of criminal acts, from when Ashley left rehearsal to when her car was abandoned at South Mountain. On the large board hanging in the analysis room, the team reconstructed the entire timeline. 7 p.m. on July 17, 1973. Ashley left home for the theater per Douglas Crane's statement. 10:30 p.m. She was last seen leaving the Phoenix Ballet Conservatory, driving alone. 11 p.m. 12 a.m. Unaccounted for window, also the time frame during which Douglas had no alibi. July 18th. A purchase receipt for Portland cement and building materials was issued, matching the suspected body concealment date. From these data points, the technical team concluded that Ashley most likely never left the Palm Avenue house that night. The phenobarbital chemical traces found in the glass at the home, combined with DNA results in the cement, reinforced the hypothesis that she was poisoned in the kitchen, where police had collected the glass with sedative residue. Forensic experts recreated phenobarbital's physiological effects. A dose 3 times normal could cause unconsciousness within 30 minutes, and higher doses could lead to respiratory arrest. Douglas Crane, with a still valid 1972 prescription, was the only person with access to the drug. After the victim lost consciousness, the perpetrator most likely moved the body to the backyard, an area where neighbors had previously heard metal clanging noises on the night of July 17. There, Douglas may have dug a pre-prepared hole under the old foundation. Materials lab analysis showed 2 overlapping cement layers. The first set within about 12 hours, the second poured the next day, exactly matching the cement purchase receipt timeline. The body being found under the second layer proved concealment occurred immediately after the new cement was delivered. Using 3D simulation technology, the technical team reconstructed the entire scene based on the yard map and excavation photos. The model showed Douglas could have acted alone. A burial pit about 1.5 meters long, 0.4 meters deep, sufficient for an adult body. After burial, he poured cement over it, leveled the surface, and years later added a new concrete layer to mask color differences. In the 1973 file, technicians had noted the ground showed signs of disturbance, but lacked legal grounds for excavation due to insufficient evidence. After the body was hidden, Ashley's vehicle, the Ford Galaxy, was moved from the home. Soil on the undercarriage and maps showed it was driven to the South Mountain area, 12 miles away. The car was parked on a deserted dirt road. Doors unlocked. Keys still in the ignition. Behavior identified as staged to mislead the investigation, creating the impression she vanished en route home. The absence of skid marks or struggle signs in the vehicle further proved it was deliberately abandoned, not the primary crime scene. The forensic lab cross-referenced timelines. Phenobarbital, in the glass victim unconscious, within about 30 minutes body, moved that same night cement receipt issued and delivered the next morning. All data aligned perfectly with a continuous sequence of actions from the evening of July 17th to the morning of July 18th, 1973. DNA results in the cement confirmed the body's presence there, while Douglas's gray hairs in the car proved he was the only person in contact with the vehicle after Ashley's disappearance. In the comprehensive report dated April 25, 2010, the Arizona State Technical Team concluded, 1. Victim Ashley Crane was poisoned with phenobarbital at her Palm Avenue residence on the evening of July 17, 1973. 2. After death, the body was buried in the backyard and covered with 2 cement layers, the second poured on July 18, 1973. Matching the materials receipt. 3. The Ford Galaxy was moved to South Mountain to stage a missing person scene. 4. All evidence supports Douglas Crane as the sole perpetrator, with opportunity, motive, and means. The report included 3D spatial simulation images, the house, burial pit location, abandoned car, and DNA match points. In the final handwritten note, Sergeant Lisa Moreno wrote, "Nearly 4 decades, but the truth remained in the cement." On April 27, 2010, the Phoenix Police Department internally released the reconstruction results. The Ashley Crane case, case #73-4471, was officially confirmed as premeditated murder, closing the missing person hypothesis. The summary memo in the file stated, "Crime scene reconstruction complete. New data aligns with old evidence. Modus operandi, poisoning, concealment, staged scene. Time of offense, night of 7/17, 1973. Nearly 40 years after that summer night, the final image of Ashley Crane, the dancer leaving the theater under late-night lights, had been pieced together with evidence and science, fully recreating the sequence of events that no one in 1973 could prove. After completing the crime scene reconstruction and establishing the modus operandi, Sergeant Lisa Moreno and the Phoenix Cold Case team moved to the next step, gathering supplemental statements from old witnesses to solidify Douglas Crane's crime timeline. Since the case was nearly 40 years old, many involved parties had retired or relocated. Moreno sent summons letters and personally visited each surviving individual from the 1973 original list. Her goal was to clarify 2 critical timelines: when Douglas left the aircraft shop and when he received the building materials. The first witness verified was Earl Dunning, 76, a former maintenance worker at Aero West Engineering, where Douglas had worked before retiring. Dunning still lived in Mesa suburbs. During the May 3, 2010 statement session, he said he clearly remembered that night because something unusual happened at the shop. According to him, Douglas arrived around 8 p.m. on July 17, 1973, carrying a briefcase and saying he needed to check old blueprints. However, he left in under 45 minutes, carrying nothing but the empty briefcase. Dunning affirmed he left the shop before 9 while I was still on shift. "I remember because it was my son's birthday. I checked the clock to call and wish him well, and saw Crane heading to the parking lot at the same time." This statement completely contradicted Douglas's 1973 claim that he worked late. Moreno cross-checked the shop security log that Holt had reviewed in 1973. The roster showed no entry for Douglas Crane from 9 p.m. to midnight, proving he was not at work after that time. Dunning's new statement was formally recorded, signed, and added to case #73-4471, Section Witness Re-examination 2010. The second witness was Raymond Ortiz, 82, formerly a driver for Carmichael Supply, the store that issued the July 18, 1973, cement receipt. Moreno located him in Tucson, living with his son. During the interview, Ortiz said he still remembered that man, tall, prematurely gray, spoke slowly. He recounted, "It was nearly 11 at night, the store was closed, but the manager asked me to make an urgent delivery of 3 bags of cement and some plywood to a Palm Avenue address." The caller introduced himself as Douglas Crane, saying he needed materials to repair the floor. He paid cash, didn't want an official receipt, just scribbled his name on a scrap of paper. Ortiz said he was surprised because "I'd never delivered to anyone that late," and clearly recalled Douglas in a white shirt, signaling with a flashlight from the yard. When shown an old photo of Douglas, Ortiz immediately confirmed, "That's him." No mistake. The statement report noted, "Witness confirms delivery on the night of 7/17 into the early morning of July 18, 1973. Aligning with suspected body concealment timeline. This fully corroborated the reconstruction conclusion. Cement poured early on 7/18. Another witness, Nancy Porter, a neighbor 2 houses down from Douglas, was also interviewed. Now in her 80s, her memory remained sharp. She said that night, she heard metal dragging and a strong cement smell around the yard. But when she looked out, she only saw Douglas's porch light on all night. "I thought they were fixing plumbing, because the next morning a delivery truck stopped briefly and left," she said. When asked why she hadn't told police in 1973, she replied, "I did tell the officer who came around, but they didn't write anything down. They said it was probably just home repairs." This supplemental statement strengthened the finding that cement pouring occurred immediately after Ashley's disappearance. Moreno compiled the 3 new statements and cross-referenced them with physical evidence. Douglas left the shop before 9 p.m., lacking alibi during the crime window. Delivery truck brought cement to the Palm Avenue house late on 7/17, no official receipt. Neighbor heard construction noises and smelled cement that night, matching the official July 18, 1973 receipt date. These pieces, combined with DNA and chemical results, formed a seamless logical chain from when Ashley left rehearsal to when the body was buried under the second cement layer. In the summary report dated May 10, 2010, Sergeant Moreno wrote, 2010 re-examined witness statements solidify the crime timeline from 21 o'clock on July 17, 1973, to 2 o'clock on July 18, 1973. Subject, Douglas Crane left work early, received building materials overnight, and concealed the body at the residence. New statements fully align with physical evidence. This memo was forwarded directly to the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office, along with all updated evidence. After nearly 40 years, statements once overlooked now became the critical key, completing the final picture of Ashley Crane's fateful night, when every scattered detail from 1973 finally fit together like puzzle pieces awaited for nearly 4 decades. On May 17, 2010, after completing the witness statement chain and receiving Maricopa County prosecutor approval, Sergeant Lisa Moreno and 2 special investigators traveled to Tucson, where Douglas Crane, now 91, resided in a civilian nursing home for retired engineers and civil servants. He was informed he would participate in a cold case file verification assistance session, per procedure, without handcuffs or detention. However, the true purpose was direct confrontation with the newly confirmed evidence. A temporary interview room was set up in the nursing home's small meeting room, softly lit, windows curtained. Douglas entered with a wooden cane, slow gait, hunched back, but eyes still sharp. He wore a gray sweater with a name tag, Douglas. Moreno introduced herself, placed the recorder on the table, and clearly stated the time, location, and purpose. She began gently, asking about his current life, health, and years in Phoenix. Douglas responded calmly, deep voice, occasionally pausing, but lucid. When she mentioned Ashley Crane, he fell silent for a moment, then softly said, "She was a good person." "Very good." Moreno opened the file, placing recent photos on the table, the pink fabric scrap, crystal necklace, and DNA report. "Mr. Crane," she said, "we found Ashley's body under the backyard cement at the Palm Avenue house. The DNA in the cement matches her perfectly, and your DNA was found in the Ford Galaxy." Douglas stared at the photos, hands trembling slightly on the table. He showed no shock, only a deep sigh, eyes lowered, then whispered, "I tried to forget that my whole life." Moreno paused briefly. "Can you elaborate? Forget what?" Douglas was silent, then replied, "What I did wrong. She didn't deserve that." His voice choked, not a full confession, but enough for the investigators to understand indirect admission. When asked if he wanted counsel present, he simply shook his head. "I've lived long enough to know the truth always comes." Over more than 2 hours, the entire interview was fully recorded. Douglas did not deny the DNA results or dispute any presented facts. When asked why he hadn't confessed earlier, he said slowly, "Back then I thought I could bury everything, her, the memory, and just keep living. But every year that passed, I heard knocking at the door in my sleep. I knew you'd come one day." Moreno asked, "Did you intentionally poison Ashley?" He replied, "I only wanted her to calm down. I didn't mean to kill her. But when I saw her collapse, I lost control of everything." When asked about concealing the body, he did not deny it but simply said, "I did the only thing I could do at the time, hide everything." The statement was recorded verbatim in the transcript, considered a highly valuable indirect confession legally. Throughout the interview, Douglas showed no resistance or attempts to justify himself. He only repeated several times, "I tried to forget." At the end of the session, Moreno turned off the recorder and signed the transcript along with the 2 witnessing investigators. In the notes section, she wrote, "Suspect Douglas Crane demonstrated clear awareness, no coercion, voluntarily agreed to answer, did not deny scientific facts, indirectly admitted criminal acts through statements, 'I tried to forget what I did wrong.'" The audio tape was sealed on site, coded as file hash 734471 Tucson in 01. That same afternoon, Moreno sent an urgent report to Phoenix PD and the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office. The next day, the entire investigation file was officially transferred to the Arizona State Attorney's Office, accompanied by the interview transcript and copies of the DNA analysis results. In the cover letter, she wrote, "Suspect Douglas Crane, 91 years old, has indirectly admitted to poisoning and concealing the body of victim Ashley Crane. Recommend considering first-degree murder charges, factoring in intent and scene staging." Moreno's final report ended with a brief sentence, like a closing remark for nearly 40 years of investigation. His silence is no longer a void, but an admission. On May 19, 2010, case hash 734471, Ashley Crane was officially received by the Arizona State Attorney's Office. The file status in the system was updated. Status active prosecution. Homicide. After nearly 4 decades, the trembling words of a 91-year-old man had pulled Phoenix's longest unsolved missing person case out of the shadows of time and into its final phase. A late but unforgettable journey toward justice. Immediately after the file was accepted by the Arizona State Attorney's Office, the lead prosecutor, Thomas Reed, requested one additional critical step, determining the specific cause of Ashley Crane's death to strengthen the indictment. Despite existing DNA evidence and Douglas Crane's indirect admission, the case still needed clear proof of the lethal mechanism to establish intent and the appropriate charge. On May 25, 2010, the Arizona State Forensic Team, again led by Dr. Laura Chen, began the toxicology and bone tissue analysis phase. Samples for examination included skull fragments recovered during excavation, surrounding soil and cement, and residual material from bone cavities and remaining cartilage. The lab used GCMS techniques to search for traces of lingering compounds in the tissue. After 3 days of analysis, initial results showed the presence of phenobarbital at abnormally high levels, equivalent to a dose causing deep coma or death in an adult. Though degraded over time, carbon isotope ratios and ionization markers in the compound still allowed identification of the pharmaceutical origin. The toxicology report stated, "Barbiturate traces have a structural profile matching common commercial phenobarbital from the early 1970s. Estimated concentration at time of ingestion exceeded minimum medical safety thresholds by 4-6 times." Concurrently, the forensic pathology team analyzed the recovered skull fragments. Under optical microscopy and micro-CT imaging, they observed fan-shaped fractures on the bone surface, concentrated at the occipital region and radiating bilaterally. The fracture pattern indicated strong mechanical force from a blunt object, possibly a hammer or metal tool, causing damage while the bone was still fresh. The marks were inconsistent with fall or post-mortem compression injuries. Bone structure analysis showed jagged fracture edges, confirming trauma occurred before or at the moment of death, not afterward. Chen compiled the synthesis. The simultaneous presence of high-dose barbiturates and cranial mechanical trauma indicates two phases. One victim lost consciousness due to drug poisoning, two subjected to physical impact, leading to immediate death or in deep coma. Chemical traces in bone confirm poisoning occurred before burial, as the toxin had time to distribute into tissue. The lab also compared the phenobarbital sample from Douglas Crane's 1972 prescription. Though the drug was no longer in circulation, molecular structure reconstructed from manufacturer records matched the tissue findings exactly. This data was added to supplemental evidence, proving the poison likely came directly from Douglas, who had a valid prescription. Combining results, the forensic team constructed the death mechanism sequence. Ashley Crane was poisoned with phenobarbital mixed into a beverage in the kitchen of her home. After losing consciousness, the perpetrator inflicted additional cranial trauma with a blunt object, interrupting respiration and circulation. The body was buried in the backyard and covered with 2 cement layers for concealment. No evidence of suicide or accident. On June 2, 2010, Dr. Chen submitted the final 34-page forensic and toxicology report. The conclusion was bolded: cause of death, acute phenobarbital poisoning, combined with traumatic brain injury from strong mechanical impact. Mechanism of death, intentional poisoning, followed by physical assault. Post-mortem condition, buried and encased in cement immediately after death, estimated within 6–12 hours of poisoning. Copies were sent to the Arizona State Attorney's Office and Phoenix Cold Case Unit. During the results presentation meeting, Sergeant Moreno silently stared at the victim's skull simulation projected on screen, the fracture spreading like cracks in a secret buried for nearly 40 years. Prosecutor Reed commented, "We now have 3 layers of evidence: biological, chemical, and mechanical. This is no longer a missing person case. This is a planned murder." On June 5, the forensic results were incorporated into the preliminary indictment. In the cause of death section, the state attorney quoted Chen's report verbatim: "Victim died from a combination of poisoning and direct physical impact to the head, causing respiratory failure and traumatic brain injury." In the final note of the report, Sergeant Lisa Moreno wrote, "What science can do today has bridged the gaps of 1973. Now we don't just know the victim was killed, we know how she died." With clear toxicology and trauma conclusions, case #734471, Ashley Crane was officially complete, with sufficient basis to prosecute first-degree murder against Douglas Crane, who for decades believed that cement layer would bury the truth forever. On August 10, 2010, after months of review and finalizing the indictment, Maricopa County Court officially approved the arrest warrant for Douglas Crane, 91, on charges of second-degree murder in the 1973 death of Ashley Crane. The warrant was signed by Judge Ruth Delgado, who had previously authorized the backyard excavation and now presided over the final legal step in the decades-long case. That same day, 2 officers from the Phoenix PD Cold Case Unit, along with a representative from the Arizona State Attorney's Office, traveled to the Tucson nursing home to execute the warrant. As the team entered, Douglas was sitting reading a newspaper in the common area. He calmly looked up when he saw Moreno, accompanied by Chief Alan Pierce. Moreno clearly read the warrant. "Douglas Crane, you are under arrest pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes Section 13-1104, second-degree murder, occurring in July 1973, victim Ashley Crane." He showed no reaction, only a slight nod, and said, "I knew you would come." The arrest proceeded orderly. Due to his advanced age and frail health, Douglas was not handcuffed, but gently escorted to the transport vehicle. As he left the nursing home, he only glanced back, his eyes more weary than fearful. That afternoon, Phoenix PD issued a press release confirming case #734471 Ashley Crane had been solved after 37 years. The press conference was held in the main headquarters auditorium, attended by dozens of reporters from local papers and national networks. Behind the podium was a black and white photo of Ashley Crane in her dance costume, beside bold text, "Cold Case Resolved, Phoenix 1973-2010. Sergeant Lisa Moreno stood before the microphones, voice restrained but clear. After 37 years, thanks to modern forensic technology and collaboration with the Arizona State Forensic Lab, we have closed one of the longest unsolved missing person cases in city history. Victim Ashley Crane was confirmed murdered in the summer of 1973. The sole suspect, Douglas Crane, has been arrested and will face criminal charges. Beside her, prosecutor Thomas Reed summarized the indictment. Toxicology results prove the victim was poisoned with phenobarbital. DNA evidence shows the body was buried in the suspect's backyard. Additionally, witnesses confirm Mr. Crane purchased building materials immediately after the victim's disappearance. His actions satisfy the elements of second-degree murder, intentional killing without premeditation. When asked why not first-degree murder, Reed explained, "Based on the record, we lack sufficient evidence of premeditation prior to the poisoning. However, the penalty for this charge can still be life imprisonment under state law." He emphasized that despite Douglas's age, there is no statute of limitations on justice. The press conference ended in a solemn yet emotional atmosphere. Media outlets ran simultaneous coverage, calling it "Cold Case Phoenix Resolved After 37 Years. The image of Sergeant Moreno, holding Ashley's old photo, appeared on the front page of the next day's Arizona Republic. Under the headline, "Phoenix Dancer Finally Found." At Phoenix PD, the original investigation team gathered to sign the case closure document. Moreno remained silent for a long while before saying, "We didn't just solve a case. We gave a woman named Ashley Crane the right to be remembered as a real victim." In her personal journal, she added a short line, "No one escapes the patience of time." That same day, Douglas was transferred to the Maricopa County Medical Detention Facility, which has a unit for elderly inmates. He underwent a full health check, then signed receipt of the indictment in the presence of appointed public counsel. The record noted he was cooperative, non-resistant, no bail request. That evening, Phoenix PD officially updated the status of case #73-4471, Ashley Crane in the system. Status: solved. Arrest made. Suspect: Douglas Crane. Charge: second-degree murder under ARS Section 13-1104. Filed: Maricopa County Superior Court. The final press release of August 10, 2010, closed with bold text, "After 37 years, the disappearance of dancer Ashley Crane has been resolved. Justice may come late, but it never loses the trail." Outside headquarters, the Phoenix evening was quiet. A desert wind blew past the remaining posters on the fence, where the image of the young dancer, now a symbol of justice's endurance, faded slowly in the yellow streetlight, closing a long chapter the city once thought forgotten. On January 3, 2011, nearly 40 years after Ashley Crane vanished from Phoenix, the trial of Douglas Crane officially opened at the Maricopa County Superior Court. The courthouse atrium was packed with reporters, witnesses, and those who had followed the case for months. In the front row, Sergeant Lisa Moreno sat with investigators from the Phoenix Cold Case Unit, the people who had brought the case from the dust of 1973 back into the light. Across the aisle, Douglas Crane, now 92, appeared in a simple gray suit, walking slowly with assistance. He wore glasses, his trembling hands resting on the table, his face calm but weary. Presiding over the trial was Judge Ruth Delgado, who had signed the excavation and arrest warrants. She opened the proceedings with a reminder, "Time may blur memory, but it cannot erase the truth." After reading the indictment, Prosecutor Thomas Reed stood and began presenting the chain of evidence considered the foundation of the entire case. First, he displayed the Arizona State Forensic Lab's DNA results. Human tissue in the cement matched Ashley Crane's DNA perfectly. Gray hairs in the Ford Galaxy belonged to Douglas Crane, and the pink fabric scrap found at South Mountain contained the victim's epidermal cells. He said, "This is an indisputable chain of scientific evidence. It shows the victim was murdered within the defendant's home, and he staged the scene." Next, the prosecution presented the toxicology report confirming death from high-dose phenobarbital poisoning combined with mechanical cranial trauma. Microscopic bone images and chemical charts were projected on a large screen, every detail aligning with the death mechanism. Reed read aloud from Dr. Laura Chen's conclusion: phenobarbital concentration in bone tissue exceeded safe thresholds by 6 times, proving poisoning. Subsequent cranial trauma caused immediate death. After the forensic evidence, the prosecution called 3 key witnesses. Earl Dunning, a former aircraft shop employee, took the stand. He confirmed Douglas left work early on the night of July 17, 1973, not staying late as previously claimed. Next, Raymond Ortiz, the delivery driver, recounted delivering 3 bags of cement to the Palm Avenue address around 11 p.m., an unusual time he had never encountered in 40 years of driving. Finally, neighbor Nancy Porter affirmed hearing digging noises and smelling cement that night. Each testimony was clear, aligning with technical data and timelines in the investigation report. When the prosecutor displayed the July 18, 1973, materials receipt, the courtroom fell silent. Reed pointed to the handwritten Douglas C. on the old scrap of paper and said, "Only one person needed to buy cement right after his wife disappeared." He concluded his argument with a statement that left the room in stunned silence: Ashley Crane did not leave that house on her own 2 feet. The hands of the man before you ensured she never returned. The defense's turn came with appointed public defender Michael Harrow. He acknowledged the DNA evidence was valid, but urged the court to consider the 37-year time lapse during which evidence had been moved multiple times and stored under varying conditions, potentially causing contamination. He argued Douglas was too old, memory impaired, and that his statements during the Tucson interview cannot be considered a confession without counsel present. Harrow emphasized, "We cannot punish someone based on memories and chemicals from nearly 4 decades ago. The evidence may be strong, but justice cannot rely on inferences from the past." In rebuttal, Prosecutor Reed countered, "DNA does not know time. Today's scientific facts carry the same truth as 1973. He played the Tucson interview recording, where Douglas clearly said, "I tried to forget what I did wrong." The hoarse voice echoed through the courtroom, followed by several seconds of absolute silence. Over 6 days of trial, both sides presented, debated, and cross-referenced images and witnesses. Douglas rarely spoke. When asked if he wished to make a final statement, he only looked down and said, "I have no more words. They found her, and that's enough." Judge Delgado called a recess for jury deliberation. After 8 hours, on the evening of January 9, 2011, the jury returned. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman, stood and read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant Douglas Crane guilty of second-degree manslaughter for poisoning and causing injuries leading to the death of victim Ashley Crane in 1973. A collective sigh rose from the gallery. Judge Delgado recorded the verdict in gavels. Douglas Crane was sentenced to 25 years imprisonment, ineligible for parole for the first 10 years. In her sentencing remarks, she said slowly, "No one can reverse the 40 years that have passed, but justice can still find its way. Defendant, you lived nearly your entire life in silence. Today, that silence ends." Douglas showed no reaction, only a slight nod. As he was led out, he paused for a second, glancing back at the photo of Ashley hanging behind the judge's bench, the young dancer, with arms outstretched under stage lights. He whispered, almost inaudibly, "I'm sorry." The next day, the judgment was officially published. State of Arizona v. Douglas Crane, case number CR 73-4471, charge, second-degree manslaughter, homicide, Phoenix, 1973. Phoenix PD held a brief press conference, confirming the case was officially closed by court verdict, becoming one of the longest resolved cold cases in state history. In her final notebook entry, Sergeant Lisa Moreno wrote, "When the jury read the verdict, I didn't see a 92-year-old man, but the shadow of a man from 1973 standing in a small kitchen where it all began." Every circle of time eventually closes. With the 25-year sentence, the Ashley Crane case officially ended its 4-decade journey, from an unsolved disappearance in Phoenix summer 1973 to justice finally pronounced in winter 2011. Douglas Crane spent only 8 months in Maricopa County detention before his health failed. In September 2011, he was transferred to the Special Treatment Unit for Elderly Inmates at Arizona State Prison Complex, Florence, which has the state prison system's central medical facility. Per management records, Douglas suffered chronic heart disease and respiratory failure, frequently requiring oxygen. Though eligible for medical clemency, he did not apply. When asked about parole, he told the supervisor briefly, "No need anymore, I've lived more than my share." On November 17, 2011, at 5:40 a.m., Douglas Crane died in the treatment room, caused determined as congestive heart failure due to advanced age. The internal death report noted, "Inmate Crane Douglas. Case number 73, 4471. Deceased by natural causes. No external injury." Case concluded. His death was confirmed by prison physician Eric Donnelly, who signed the certificate the same day. With no surviving immediate family, the body was cremated per Arizona state protocol, ashes sent to Phoenix for temporary storage at a funeral home. News of Douglas Crane's death reached Phoenix PD that same morning. Sergeant Lisa Moreno, still the file's supervising officer, received the fax. She sat silently for a long while, then typed the system update, case #73-4471. Status, closed by arrest. Nearly 40 years after Ashley Crane's disappearance, the case was fully closed. Not just investigatively, but legally. On November 22, Phoenix PD filed the final investigation report with the Arizona Department of Public Safety as required for cases with verdicts and deceased defendants. The 26-page summary included the Maricopa court judgment, DNA and toxicology results, interview transcript, and defendant death confirmation. The final line in the conclusion was bolded. "The homicide of Ashley Crane has been conclusively resolved. Subject Douglas Crane deceased. Case permanently closed." Before submission, Moreno reviewed the entire file one last time. From Det. Raymond Holt's first handwritten 1973 notes, through forensic annotations, old scene photos, to modern DNA reports, all reorganized in a new brown archive box labeled Case #73-4471, Closed Archive. In her personal note, she wrote, "No one truly escapes the truth, only the truth waits long enough to be found." On November 30, 2011, the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office issued a brief statement, "Phoenix Cold Case Resolved. The Ashley Crane case, missing since 1973, is closed following defendant Douglas Crane's death in custody. File status: closed by arrest. All forensic data, witness statements, and evidence preserved under 25-year archival standards." That same day, the Arizona Department of Public Safety noted in its 2011 annual report that this was the oldest homicide case in state history resolved using DNA technology. The report stated, "The Ashley Crane case demonstrates the importance of long-term evidence preservation and modern forensic capabilities in restoring justice after decades." In December 2011, file #73-4471 was transferred to the State Archive in Tucson, which stores resolved cold cases. In the internal catalog, the case was marked with a red label, indicating closed by arrest deceased suspect. From here, the story of Ashley and Douglas Crane officially became part of Arizona judicial history. In the Phoenix PD office, Sergeant Lisa Moreno rearranged the old photo of Ashley Crane, the young dancer at her 1973 rehearsal. She framed it in wood and placed it on the shelf with a small engraved line, closed by arrest, November 2011. There was no applause, no crowd, only late-day light streaming through the window, reflecting off the photo of the lost dancer. A reminder that justice, no matter how delayed, always finds its way back to where it belongs. After the Ashley Crane case officially closed at the end of 2011, Arizona's legal and media communities viewed it as a landmark in state criminal investigation history. Not only for the record, 37-year gap between crime and verdict, but also as the first case in Phoenix PD's cold case initiative fully resolved using next-generation DNA forensics. This success proved forensic science could bridge gaps left by time and investigative errors. In the Arizona Department of Public Safety's 2012 annual report, the case was listed under Model Cold Case Resolution, a template for reinvestigating old files. The report stated, File #734471 exemplifies the value of proper evidence preservation. Hair samples, fabric scraps, receipts, and an unfinished letter, seemingly worthless in 1973, became the key to solving the case nearly 4 decades later. From this case, AZDPS issued a new mandatory guideline. All evidence in missing person or unexplained death cases must be stored for at least 50 years, up from 25. The case also catalyzed a statewide DNA re-examination program, leading to over 200 other files being reviewed. At Arizona State University, the Forensic and Criminal Justice Department added the Ashley Crane case to its curriculum under the topic Evidence Longevity and Posthumous Prosecution. Young investigators studied how Sergeant Lisa Moreno combined old data with new techniques, from unsealing 1970s red wax evidence bags to modern chemical analysis, from interviewing elderly witnesses to degraded DNA sequencing in cement. For the media, the case was simply called the Phoenix Dancer Case. The Arizona Republic ran a series titled When Time Confesses, recounting the Phoenix Cold Case Unit's persistent journey. These reports raised public awareness about evidence storage and forensic technology in delivering justice for forgotten victims. Internally, Phoenix PD launched a special training program named Project Crane, inspired by File #734471. The project trains new investigators in backlog file management and cross-disciplinary reinvestigation. The name Crane, once tied to a young woman's tragedy, now symbolizes perseverance and transparency in policing. Sergeant Lisa Moreno, in her 2012 State Forensics Conference speech, said briefly, "The most important lesson from the Ashley Crane case is not how to catch a killer, but how to never forget a victim. Every old file can speak, if we listen patiently." The quote was frequently cited in later professional reports. By the end of 2012, File #734471 was displayed in the Phoenix PD Cold Case Memorial Room, alongside Ashley's photo in her dance costume and a brass plaque reading, Closed by Arrest, 2011. Justice Through Time. From a clueless disappearance in the summer of 1973, the Ashley Crane case became a turning point for Arizona investigations, proof that science can give voice to silence, and that justice, though delayed, remains strong enough to span half a century to fulfill its mission. The story of Ashley Crane, the young dancer who vanished in Phoenix summer 1973, is not just a case solved after 37 years, but a clear reflection of the relationship between truth, time, and human responsibility in modern American society. From the carefully collected and preserved glass containing phenobarbital to the DNA analysis of cement nearly 4 decades later, we see the power of science, perseverance, and faith in the legal system. Had those small pieces of evidence been ignored or destroyed, justice might never have been found. This is a profound reminder for an America increasingly reliant on speed, data, and technology. Truth does not come from the newest things, but from protecting the right things the longest. The story also highlights the value of those who uphold principles, like Sergeant Lisa Moreno, who bridged 2 generations of investigation, from 1973 handwritten notes to 2010 DNA reports. In a country where performance pressure sometimes leads to giving up, she reminds us that justice needs not speed, but endurance, and honesty. In today's American society, where trust in institutions and law is often tested, the Ashley Crane case reminds every citizen that truth can be buried, but never lost. Whether on a national scale or in personal life, the lesson remains: preserve the evidence, the memories, and the faith. Because one day, they may be the only thread pulling us back to justice, to righteousness, and to ourselves. Thank you for following to the end of the journey to restore justice for Ashley Crane, a case thought forgotten for nearly 4 decades. If you believe no truth is hidden by time forever, subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more cold cases in the next video.